Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Probably we've all seen the press conference of Rutte and de Jonge. We only saw a small piece of it, but I'm sure everybody is totally done with COVID, right? Zoom, Teams, WebEx, choking, face mask, being present at home, we with closed pubs, restaurants and ski resorts. And as from Saturday or Sunday, as we heard, 2030, also the avondklok, the curfew. I looked that up, obviously. So fighting against depression and a mental breakdown, we created a mantra together. Let's unlock 2021 together. We sent you the book, The Offer You Can't Refuse. And because we really love you, we also offer this free webinar. And let's be honest, where do you find an agency this generous today, right? So what I try to say, welcome everybody on the third DDB Performance Day. Welcome all people from Carnex.com. I see people from Centraal Beheer, from Adidas, Kruidvat, KLM, Pijnenburg, Riedel, Toyota, Vattenfall, you name it, Unibet, Leaseplan, MG, NPO, Funda, PepsiCo, ExxonMobil, and HAC, NOS, BBC, CNN, it's all there. I can see it on the screen. Nice to see you, because I can see you almost, I can see 50 people here. So please keep your cameras on, also for the other performance. And the mic's off, obviously, till you have your question in the time frame for Q&A. Today, we bring two worlds together. We bring together, in the last two performance days, we also brought two things together. Because we had Les Binet, and in his book, The Long and the Short of It, he explains the balancing act between brand building on one side and sales activation on the other. And for today, we invited Steven van Belleghem and George Strakhoff, and they will be talking about another balancing act. And that's the act between brand strategy on one side and customer experience on the other side. So the question they will put on the table today is, what is more important? What do you think is more important, brand strategy or customer experience? And for the sake of discussion, I created two extremes, Mr. Macro and Mr. Micro. So Mr. Macro, he's making the brand the dominant hero, right? Overseeing the world from his ivory tower, he's interested in brand values only. He's a little bit the snob in our area. Mr. Micro, you also know Mr. Micro, he's his counterpart, working on the street in his funnel. He's obsessed by micromanaging touch points all day. And he's a little bit the nerd in our group. So the good news of today is that they're both right. Mr. Micro knows that Nike is successful in retargeting because they've been building the brand for 2 decades or even more. Mr. Micro knows that a great customer experience can be an extremely effective brand builder. So I have a personal example. Last year, I had to cancel a flight to Spain, I believe, because a friend of mine tragically passed away. I had to call the insurance company. It's Centraal Beheer. I hope they were looking for my cancellation insurance. And they told me that the cancellation was covered. So I said, are you totally sure? Because it's not family, it's a friend of the family. And then the help desk lady said, Mr. van der Lek, it's not up to us who is precious for you. And that really made a deep impression. So I like this lady, I want to buy insurance from this lady, I want to buy my energy from this lady, I want to have my iPhone subscription from this lady, because I trust her and she's the brand that could change my life. Today, we have our own Mr. Macro and Micro. So George Strakhoff on the left, he is our European Strategy Director of DDB, and Steven van Belleghem, author of the bestseller The Offer You Can't Refuse. And these united forces will help us exploring the both sides of the same medal and discovering the truth in the middle. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your mics on mute and do not hesitate to post your questions in the chat. We will have a close look on the chat. And first, welcome Mr. Steven Van Belleghem. Steven.
I got my own one.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to see all of you. And thanks for having me here in this wonderful virtual event. I'm the micro guy, as I was positioned by Dick, and the CX guy, so that's really cool. This is a new thing for me, so I'm very happy with that. Now, I'm gonna share my story with you guys, The Offer You Can't Refuse, which is a story about the future of customer experience. And I would like to look back to what happened last year for a second. In my opinion, 2020 wasn't just the year of the pandemic, it was the year of the biggest digital training course in human history. And we had to change our behavior. We created new habits. And one of those new behaviors were like these kind of meetings, of course. And by the way, before we dive into the CX stuff, I just want to share a theory with you guys. I have a theory about online meetings. I would love to meet the founders of Google, of Zoom and Teams to check my hypothesis, because I'm convinced that the guys who invented this interface, they must have been a huge fan of the Muppet Show. Because if you look to the way how the Muppets were organized, it is exactly how we are doing business today. And I thought that was really funny. But we were fast learners. Once we got into the digital training courses and the digital virtual meetings, we were really good at it. There was one enemy that we had, that was the mute button. We all have some sort of a love-hate relationship with the mute button. It's always like, mute yourself, and then you want to say something, then it's like, oh, you are on mute. So we don't really like that button. But all of us easily, early on in the process, we became close friends with this device, the camera. And many people early on understood the benefits of the camera and what it could do and how you could prepare yourself differently to go out to work. And most of us are cool with that. Like when I see all of you, you're doing a good job out there. Some people made mistakes in that process, and that's also part of that training course that we went into. But if you really look into it, you know, and in my opinion, 2020 was some sort of a time machine that we all stepped into. We stepped into it in March 2020. And in terms of digital behavior, it's like we stepped back out in March 2027, saying we made a jump of 7 years in terms of digital behavior during the pandemic. And this graph is the one that illustrates that best, in my opinion. It shows the evolution of e-commerce in the United States in the past 10 years. And then you see that in the first 8 weeks of the first lockdown, e-commerce grew faster than in the 10 years before that. More growth in 8 weeks than in 10 years. And another stat where you see the huge jump in terms of digital behavior is this one, screen time. In 2020, every adult in the world, spend on average 13.5 hours watching a screen. 13.5 hours. I mean, that's of course the combination of our phone and our TV and our computers. Maybe some of you are now watching 2 screens at the same time. I see some of you even working on 2 different screens. So we can add up things a little bit. You can actually spend more hours on a screen than you have hours in the day, if you think about it. And sometimes that hits us. But if you look at the facts, it's just astonishing to see the results. 13.5 hours, that's 810 minutes a day. And let's just assume that you sleep 7 hours a day. That means that 75% of your day is spent while you're watching a screen. And that's all part of that big digital jump forward, of course. But one of the consequences is, of course, that on another domain, we also have a challenge to deal with. Because of the big digital jump forward, one of the consequences is that our mental health is not as strong anymore as it used to be. Loneliness, social isolation are a problem of today's world. And the truth is that for many of you, you guys work for wonderful companies and wonderful brands. We just heard the list. The truth is that for many of us, our working days have been longer in the last few years, than before that. This is tough on everybody. And because of that, our mental well-being is also making a jump forward. And the need to spend more time on that is also in that time machine. And then the last thing that is in that time machine is our higher sensitivity for challenges that the world is facing. Like today, there are many challenges on our plate. We're dealing with a lot of difficult issues to solve. And the truth is that citizens, your customers, they have a higher level of trust in you guys and business leaders to deal with all these problems than they have in government leaders. And I'm from Belgium, and in Belgium that is double as high, the difference between those two. That's just reality in our country. But the truth is, around the world, 75% of all citizens, they expect organizations like yours to proactively add value to society and don't wait until a government is forcing you to do so. 3 elements that are part of that time machine. And what is becoming clear now is that during 2020, we had all these new behaviors and new habits that we did not climb the Matterhorn. You know, we didn't went steep up to go steep down again. No, we climbed the Table Mountain. We took a huge digital jump forward, and now we reach this new level. And that's what I mean with this time machine. And of course, this evolution, this big jump forward on different levels, comes with new expectations of customers. And I've built a model around that, the offer you can't refuse model. You all got the book from DDB, which is wonderful. And in the story, I built, you know, a set of components that can create a fantastic customer experience. And in the old world, it was easy to be good in customer experience. You needed a good product, good service, and good price. And today, obviously, that is still important. There's no doubt about that. But I don't have to tell you that there's more. And one of the new minimum demands is digital convenience. Digital convenience is seen as the most natural thing in the world. Today, we have some sort of a zero tolerance for digital malfunctioning. And that level of zero tolerance is very high. I just want to play a game with you guys. I see all of you there, but I want to ask you a question and you need to answer with fingers, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay? If you download a new app on your phone, how many chances do you give that new app to prove itself to you? You can show fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you need 10, you can go for 10. Okay, the average is 1.3. 1.3. We have 7 very kind people that say 2. All the others say 1. And now a second question. For the people who gave the app, the new app, 1 chance, how long does that chance last? In minutes, you can show your fingers again. If it's less than a minute, you put your fist down like that, thumbs down. Okay. We have someone who's like, okay, 2 minutes, 3 minutes even. We have a 3 minute, we have a 5-minute person in the room. You are the most gentle person I have ever met in my life. So you must be very, very kind. All the others are like, okay, thumbs down, 1 or 2. We give it 1.3 chances on average, and for most of us, the average of this group is 1 minute. There's zero tolerance for digital failures. So it's crucial for your organizations to focus on delivering an, let's say, experience, digital experience that is flawless, that is really cool. Now, to answer the question how to do that, we don't focus on technology. I want you to focus on something else. We're going to focus on this. And I'm going to ask you a question, and this time you can answer the question in the chat. So be ready. This is, again, an interactive moment. What is the scarcest resource of your customers? And we have different industries here, different kinds of people. We have, you know, every possible industry. What is the scarcest resource? Someone is saying Wi-Fi. Yeah, that's a good one. Who said Wi-Fi? Who said Wi-Fi? Can you raise your hands? You're the funniest person in the room. We had the nicest person in the room. Now we have the funniest person. All the others say time. Time is the scarcest resource that we have. And I know you all agree with me for that. Then the question is, to what extent is your organization managing the time of your customers? And there are basically 2 things that you can do with the time of your customers. You can help them to save out time, make their life more efficient. They will like that. And on the other hand, you can help your customers to enhance their time, make it more relevant, make it more fun. Companies like Disney, they try to give you a good time. They try to enhance your time. Big technology companies, Booking.com, Amazon, those kind of companies, they make your life as efficient as possible. And because of that, you give them time. And that's the strange paradox of time. The company that saves most of your time is the company that gets most of your time. That's interesting. Huh? And some companies try to do both. Like Netflix or Coolblue, they try to do both. Like personally, me, I'm a huge fan of the skip intro button of Netflix. Do you know that one? The skip intro button. Every time I push it, I'm like, yoo-hoo! I save 30 seconds. And it feels really good. And then I give 2 hours back to Netflix. That's my relationship that I have with them. So that's really cool. But what you see now is that a company like Disney, for instance, is investing in new interfaces. Their Magic Bands, as an example. And because of them, you can use their parks in a more efficient way. We see how companies like McDonald's and Domino's Pizza completely reinvented their user interface to make the buying process more efficient. And because of that, they just sell more. Where are you in this process? How can you combine both with your beautiful organizations? And the opportunity in the market is that the majority of the organizations is just interested in selling their own stuff. And they don't manage this scarce resource that their customers have, which is time, and that you all agreed with. And the cool thing is, with new technologies, you can actually create customer benefits that help people to save time. Using digital in a smart way can help you to create faster than real-time services. How can you solve problems before a customer even knows that there is a problem? Hyper-personalization. It's not about the needs of the average customer, it's about the needs of the individual customer. And convenience levels are as high or should be as high as the apps on the homepage of our phone. That's the benchmark for all of you. Now, I want to give you an example. Now, look, you guys were invited to this event, so I assume that you guys are important and smart and also nice people. Otherwise, you wouldn't be invited here today. So we're here with a closed group of fantastic people. And I sincerely hope that some of you have invested some of your savings in Amazon or Apple and Facebook, because that will give you a relaxing feeling. But what I would really hope is that there is someone in this room who invested in this company. A company that outperformed Google times 100 on the stock market. And it's a company that you all know. It's called Domino's Pizza. Just out of curiosity, is there someone here in this room who invested in Domino's Pizza? Can you raise your hand and identify yourself, please? You can be honest, it's a closed group. Is there anyone who invested in Domino's Pizza? No one. I have to be honest with you guys. I've been asking this, ever since COVID started, and I haven't met a single person yet who raised her or his hand. My conclusion is, if you did invest in Domino's Pizza, you don't spend time in this kind of events anymore. Then you have different hobbies in life, probably. But isn't it crazy? I mean, this is Domino's Pizza. I mean, they didn't change the world. They've been selling pizza, and they will be selling pizza for the rest of their life. That's what these guys do. But still, they outperformed Google and Amazon. And I wanna share a metaphor, a mindset that they use that I think you guys can use as well. Just virtualize this for a second. Follow me in my thinking. Imagine that you and your best friend, that you are walking in the jungle. And now, Domino's Pizza is no client of mine. Someone is asking that. No client. I'm not involved. I don't even eat their products. But imagine this for a second. You and your best friend are walking in the jungle. And it's a beautiful day. Sun is shining, you're taking selfies, and you and your best friend, you're having a conversation of a lifetime. It's brilliant. But suddenly, a lion shows up. What is important at that moment? If you want to survive that situation, it is important that you can run faster than your friend. There is no need to be faster than the lion to survive that situation. And that's exactly the mindset that Domino's Pizza used. They were like, okay, can we be faster than Amazon? No. But can we be faster than Pizza Hut? Yes, that's not that hard. And then they start to ask the question, what if we become faster, easier, and more fun to work with than any other pizza company out there? What if we make it too easy to do business with us? And then they dove into their data to make it happen. And they discovered this one thing. They discovered that 80% of the people, 80% of you guys, is ordering the same pizza over and over again. Every time when you order pizza, same pizza. Which means, as a marketer, if you create an app and you put the entire menu on that app, you are frustrating 80% of your clients. What those 80% want is just a button to get to their favorite pizza. And that's exactly what Domino's Pizza created, the push for pizza button. You put it on your desk, you're hungry, and you go like, bam, you slam it, and then 20 minutes later, they bring your favorite pizza. It is brilliant. But what's even better is this one, the zero-click app. My friends, the only thing you need to do is you open up the app, and then you wait a few seconds, and there you go. 20 minutes later, they bring your favorite pizza. You don't even have to do anything anymore. What if you make it too easy? What if you make it too fast? What if you make it fun? You know, the interface of the future will become more invisible, more personalized, will require less effort from people, and will be more and more proactive. How can you optimize every detail from the customer journey? And why is that so important? Because digital convenience has become a commodity. If you have it, fine. People will feel it's the most natural thing in the world. But we all have zero tolerance. We just saw that. And because of that, it has become a commodity. It's only a negative differentiator these days. So if we can conclude that digital convenience is becoming the new minimum, then the question is, what are customer expectations that go beyond that? What do people expect that goes beyond convenience? And how can you add components to these minimum demands to create an offer people can't refuse? On top of the minimum demand, I want to add 2 dimensions that you guys can play with. On the one hand, a partner in life philosophy. On the other hand, social responsibility, adding value to society. And if you manage to combine those 2, you create an offer people can't refuse. Now, I want to walk you through this. So we take the minimum demand, and we want to add more value to our customers. So we become a partner in life. Now, I want you to play a game for a second. You have to think with me again, guys. Imagine this. Tomorrow morning, you wake up and you look around and you think, oh my God, I have turned into a rhino. Just imagine that it happens. Tomorrow morning, you don't wake up in your beautiful, cozy bed, but you look around and you're like in the bush in Kenya and you have become a rhino. Do you know what your first concern would be as a rhino? I don't know if you ever considered that or spent some time thinking on that. What would I do if I become a rhino? Probably not, but the first thing that you guys would be interested in is food and water. A little bit like a human, but then it's food and coffee. And the good news is you can do that. You can take care of food and water as a rhino. The bad news is you're also concerned in your safety and your healthcare, and you're not so good at that because nature made a mistake. Nature assumed that a rhino would have no natural enemy. Of course, just look at the animal. And if you're a lion and you see rhino, zebra, zebra, even the dumbest lion in the bush will go for the zebra. So no natural enemies, but we forgot humans and poachers. But nature made a mistake thinking, okay, rhinos will have no natural enemies, so because of that, its smell and its eyesight is not good enough. So it's an easy target. Luckily, the rhino has a partner in life. These birds, the oxpeckers. And the oxpeckers don't just eat the parasites from the back of the rhino, no, they also function as an alarm system. These birds, they can spot humans from a distance. And when they see humans, they make a different sound. And then the rhino can hear that, and the rhino is like, okay, the birds are doing their thing again, I have to run. And then the rhino is alerted. That's my best possible metaphor I could find for what a partner in life would mean for your organizations. It's about being around without being intrusive, and it's about adding value in the broadest possible way at the moment that it's relevant for clients. This is about understanding the human behind the customer. And the better you understand the movie that humans have in the back of their mind about their life, the better you will be able to create services, to create value in their life. This is not about transactional perfection. This is about emotional optimization. This is not about a customer journey. It's about a life journey. And I want to show you an example from a very conservative industry, real estate. I'm a huge fan of this company called Upgrade Estate, and they create buildings for students. They build apartments for students, and they rent them out, they take care of everything. Now, traditionally, when you rent a student home, you have to pay the rent and you get bricks that are in a certain shape. That's about it. That's the transactional part. Now, these guys from Upgrade Estate, they want to go further, and they want to become a life partner for their students. So one of the things that they do is in each of their apartment buildings, there is a mental coach available, 24/7. There's always a mental coach. Some students are lonely or are afraid to go to the exams, or there's a conflict in the building. They make sure that there's a mental coach available. And now with COVID, what they've seen from their own research is that more than half of their students is having mental challenges. They're getting depressed, all these students, and I understand that. I fully sympathize with that. Well, they instantly hire 20 psychologists and offer their services for free to their students. They want to be a partner in life. They have this thing called Upgrade Academy. As a student, you can follow courses with them. Courses of things that you learn that are important for life, but that you don't learn on the student benches, but that can start your career. They offer that for free. It's part of the package. So these guys don't just want to rent out an apartment, they want to be a partner for the student. They understand the needs that students have, they understand the human behind the customer, and they play that game. And partner in life is also about typical human skills. Some people believe, okay, we made the big digital jump forward, so the human part is irrelevant. That's absolutely not true. It's on the contrary, I would say. There's this old economic law. It's the law of scarcity. And if something becomes scarce, it actually increases in value. Well, the human part has been really, really scarce in the last few months. Because of that, it has become more valuable than ever before. When something is scarce, it increases in value. But then the question is, as a human, in which skills do we need to excel in this digital world? And the answer is simple. We need to excel in those fields where computers are not that prominent in. And then you come to real human skills like empathy, passion, creativity. Basically, what you need now is an empathy boost in your organization, because that's been more valuable than ever before. And basically what we see, all of us were first-row witnesses of the evolution of work. In the past, people worked with their hands. Today, we work with our brain. Tomorrow, if we want to make a difference to our customers, it's about working from the heart, because that is something that a machine cannot do, and we can do this as humans. And it's in small things. Like, I love this little video here from this UPS driver in Canada when it was really snowing like crazy. He just took a snow shovel and, emptied the driveway of this person. Why? We don't know. Maybe he knows who lives there and thinks, okay, this person is not really capable to do this for himself or herself. I'm going to take care of this. It only takes me a few seconds. But it's a random act of kindness. It's human kindness. We like to see this. And maybe not just for our clients, but why not also for our competitors? If a competitor is in need, why don't we help them out? I think the world is in need for human kindness. And if you can, beam that out as an organization, it is extremely valuable these days. The only mistake we cannot make is this one. It's not because we are human that we are good in delivering human qualities. I mean, many of us will recognize this. You go to a certain place, there's a human there, but the service that you get is just below par. It's not because we are a human that we excel in the human skills. Humans can surprise, we can do this. Computers can deliver, humans can over-deliver. We can leave the script in favor of our client. And the more digital the world will be, the more valuable these three dimensions will become. The positive energy transfer between humans, nothing is stronger than that. That's all part of that partner in life philosophy. And now we have the top of the model, the last step. Having an impact on society, changing your world. Today, more and more, we are all desperately seeking for organizations that are willing to take the responsibility. Authenticity is a buzzword in marketing, but I think it's overrated. You know who's really authentic? Today, we're saying goodbye from someone who's really, really authentic. Our good friend, Mr. Trump, is leaving the White House as we speak. He's very authentic, but maybe not that responsible. We need organizations and people that take responsibility because the world is facing important challenges. We have the fight against racism and discrimination. We have the louder and louder cry and the urgency for climate change and to act upon that. We have the biggest healthcare crisis in human history with a devastating impact on society. There's a lot on our plate. And as I mentioned before, the market expects organizations to step forward and to act upon that. And maybe you think, okay, Steven, changing the world, it sounds really cool, but we don't have the power to change the world. And maybe you're right. But all of us have the power to change our world. You can change your world, not just as an organization, but also as an individual. And it's about taking responsibility. I want to show you this example. CVS is one of the top 2 pharmacy chains in the US. And their mission statement is to make America healthier, something like that. Now, one day, a couple of years ago, one of their clients came to them and said, guys, you want to make us healthier? But let's face it, you are selling cigarettes in your pharmacies. Now, for us Europeans, this sounds really weird. A pharmacy that is selling cigarettes, we don't have that. But probably you've been in those pharmacies in the US. They're like supermarkets, and they also sell cigarettes. But the management of CVS was thinking and saying, okay, this is a valid point. This is a valid point. Maybe we should stop selling cigarettes. And they talked about it, and they made the call. They said, okay, we're not going to sell tobacco anymore. And that sounds like an easy decision, but they made $2 billion in revenues every year by selling cigarettes. And let's be honest, guys, I mean, selling cigarettes is easy money. People just come in, ask for their cigarettes. You don't have to do any effort. You just have to have them in stock. $2 billion. But still, they decided to stop selling them. You can imagine that that wasn't their best day on the stock market. The people in Wall Street were like, okay, time to replace the CVS management. These guys are not taking their responsibility. They have a different definition of taking responsibility in Wall Street than in the rest of the world. So at Wall Street, they were like, no, we need to replace these guys. But still, they continued, and they said, okay, no, we're gonna move forward with this. But they weren't naive. They've communicated this in a brilliant way. They said, okay, dear clients, we're gonna stop smoking. We're gonna stop selling cigarettes. Wouldn't this be the best day in history for you to stop smoking together with us? Why don't we quit together? We're not going to sell it anymore. You're not going to use it anymore. And we're going to help you. We have coaches available. Of course, we sell products that can help you with your quest to stop smoking. And they communicated that in a brilliant way. And as a consequence, they didn't lose revenue. And as a second consequence, the amount of smokers in the US actually decreased because of this decision of CVS. They took their responsibility, and you know, in hindsight, it looks like an easy decision, but you all know if you cut $2 billion in revenues from one day to another, and now we know that their campaign was successful, but no one knows this up front, it is a bold move. And it's one of the 4 components that people value in an offering these days. These 4 levels are 4 components to invest in to make sure that your customers have an offer they can't refuse. Digital convenience, a good product, has become a commodity. The bottom of the model has become a commodity, a minimum requirement. Today, people expect more than just convenience. So you have 4 levels to play with. And the question is, how far are you on each of these 4 levels? And the more these 4 levels are integrated in one story, the better your story will be, and the easier it will be to understand everything what you do for both your customers and your employees. How far are you? Where can you double down on? Where do you need to invest more in? Where are you doing a great job that you can communicate more about? And if you bind everything together, you create the offer you can't refuse. Now, before we go into questions, I just want to end with this slide. I want to invite you to dream. Dare to dream about what could be the best possible customer experience. And then you reverse engineer that back to today, and you start building that as of today to create an offer customers cannot refuse. This is what I had for you at the beginning of this event. I hope it was a good start of our hours here together. If you like my work, feel free to check me out on Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn. I share a lot of content there, and it would be an honor to welcome all of you there. For now, thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to invite Dick back on the stage with me to see if you have any questions for me. Thank you very much.
There are some questions, also some remarks I see. I think it's Brenda Kruidvat was the first to stop selling tobacco entirely. So that's a nice connection. But we also have some questions, Steven.
Okay.
And we are gonna thank you for your presentation later on, because you're not ready, and we're not ready with you so far. So the first question, you want brands to speed up and to make a big leap forward in their customer experience, right? Reality is that most big changes in organizations, they start with a bold decision of the board, of a visionary CEO.
Yeah.
Reality is that the question is, how many really bold CEOs do we have? Because the trend is towards decentralization, to self-steering teams, to agile scrum teams, etc., where the decision-making is done on a much lower level. So the question is, how do we make this big new impression as a brand or as a company?
Yeah, well, I think you need both. I think you need the bold visionary story to tell, because that is the direction your company and your brand is going into. Without that, if you then just have decentralized teams, you will have a scattered situation and nobody will understand what's going on. You need a certain direction to go into, and that's, in my opinion, the role of the senior leadership team. And then it's a bold idea, and to make it happen, that's often a hurdle. I'm a huge believer in the theory of 100 small steps. A lot of the companies here are big companies, right? Complex organizations. Those organizations sometimes have the tendency then to come up with 3 strategic projects, and they're huge, and it's 3 years per project before we see the final result, and that is frustrating people. What you need is fast energy, and you create fast energy with 100 small steps, and you can then almost succeed in a step or 2 steps a week, and then people get the feeling, okay, things are happening. And then the small teams see the direction, they see the efforts, they get motivated to do things, and that combination can work really well.
But are you saying that a lot of companies try to build and to sell a big cathedral to their company, where you have to start with just the reconstruction of the kitchen first?
Yeah, I think you need the drawing of the cathedral, and then you need to start with the first tile. And it's a journey that you go into, and you, if you create just 3 big steps before you have the cathedral, people get disappointed because it takes so long before step 1 is being achieved.
Yeah, and do you think that the McKinseys of this world, meanwhile, because they're famous about their consultancy, not because of their implementation, that there's a different situation right now, or that for this transformation of companies, businesses also have to rely on their agencies, for instance?
I think what you need to make it happen is a network of specialists around you. All these companies have brilliant people in their organization, and you need to use them, of course. But the truth is that sometimes they have lack of specific talent or specific resource, and it's not that easy to find them all the time. So I believe in a network of players that you build around you, where you use specific agencies with the skills that they have to make things happen. It would be crazy to do everything on your own.
Yeah, okay. Next question. If you don't control the entire chain, like a fast mover brand or a car manufacturer that works with independent dealers, for instance, where do you start? How do you start this change of customer experience?
Oh, very simple. You focus on the things where you do have impact on. I have to say, I meet so many companies that when you talk about customer experience, their first reaction is to talk about all the things that they cannot do. Like then you meet a healthcare company, regulations. You meet a financial services company, regulations. And my first reflex is if they say like, we cannot do that, that means that within the boundaries of everything that you can do, you are perfect, right? Because then you get frustrated and you can't move further, but they're not perfect within the boundaries of their power. So focus on the boundaries of your power. If you're a car manufacturer and you have to talk to dealers, make the dealers excited. Because if the dealers get excited about you, there's a big chance that they will share that excitement with their customers. If you're a fast mover, I mean, the retailers are an important group, but they're not always, it's not always such a great relationship, but you have access to the end user as a fast mover. I mean, this whole model can be applied to a fast mover. There's a cool example. There's Procter & Gamble. They make Pampers, right? And traditionally, you go to the store and you get your Pampers. That's how it works. Now, I have to be honest, when I was a dad for the very first time, that was 2009, I was like a nerdy father. I was completely uncertain. So I'm going to tell you a secret now, and it's going to be very embarrassing, guys, so be ready for that. I made an Excel sheet with all the key KPIs of our baby. How often he went to the bathroom, how many hours he slept, how much he ate.
Graphics.
I had graphs. Like now we have all COVID graphs. I had baby graphs. But now we have P&G, and they came up with this new sub-brand called Lumai by Pampers, and they basically do what I did. And you can order a package, a service package. It's a smart mattress. It's a smart camera. It's smart diapers. And basically they look to the needs that young parents have. Young parents are worried about the food, going to the toilet, sleeping, and are they still breathing? Well, all these questions are answered by Lumai by Pampers. And of course, they add a subscription to their product to it. That's the commercial part. But they become a partner in life for young parents. And by doing so, they suddenly create a way to get direct access to the customer.
And they take it all. They have the full share of wallet, right?
What was that?
There's the full share of wallet.
Yeah, they do.
In that area.
Yeah.
So let's see if there are other questions. Meanwhile, I don't think there are new questions.
I see one there, Dick.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a recommendation for companies who are not able to do regular business right now due to COVID? Is this the window of opportunity to improve their CX?
It's a good question. What if you're out of business today? I see a trend happening where one of the key, let's say, new areas of doing business is where the service comes directly to the business, where you don't go to the business, but it comes to you. Like, and adding entertainment to it. Like in the beginning of the first lockdown, there was this bar here in the Netherlands called Luigi's Café in Houthalen. And Luigi's Café was closed, but they became an online bingo organizer. So everyone in Houthalen started to play bingo with them, and they delivered all the bingo cards at everyone's doorstep. They had more than 700 people participating every week for 10 euros each.
Yeah.
It was a huge success. If I would have a fashion store that is closed today, I would do virtual fashion shows in my living room, live stream on Instagram or on Zoom, invite my clients, and bring the service to them. So this is absolutely a great moment to experiment. And the goal is bring the service to the client rather than wait until they come.
Is that also a situation that you have nothing to lose at the moment?
You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
And smart companies are doubling down on new models. Look at Disney with Disney+. This was for them the perfect moment in history to launch it. Yeah. Suddenly they have 80 million people in 9 months. That was their 5-year goal. And now if you saw the last press conference of Disney, they're going to go full force on Disney+. They would have never done it like this if movie theaters would still be open.
Sometimes you need a crisis, right, for big changes.
And then afterwards, you take the best of the old world and you have the new model on top and you can get out stronger.
Yeah. Helma from Vattenfall, she's asking, obviously their purpose is fossil-free living within 1 generation. Would you call this facilitating in a life goal too?
I would call it changing the world. Okay. Yeah, I think that it has an impact on everyone. If they succeed in that mission, you have a strong impact on society. You're solving one of the key issues in the world today. So that's, in my opinion, unless I understand it wrongly, but it's the top of the model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the last questions is a question from Hans. And we can see it in the chat. Is the Pampers example, Stephen seems to distinguish between CX and commercial, the subscription called the commercial part. How do you relate CX to commercial, which is making money, which is the goal for CX as well?
Of course, this is one of the big myths that CX is a cost center. CX should be a profit center and a revenue generator. The better your CX and the better your services, the more money people will spend. They're not opposing directions. They should go in the same direction. And we live in a world where people are willing to pay for more and more services than ever before. It's not all for free. Good CX can be a service where you pay for if it adds value to your life. That's a fantastic experience for people. So those are not conflicting areas.
Okay. I think it's time for some coffee. So thank you so far. We have a 10-minute break. Sorry? I get a correction. We have a 5-minute break. We're running a little bit out of time. So it's time for the bathroom, for coffee, for educating your children a little bit, and for our colleagues from DDB Unlimited. Please go back to work for 5 minutes. Well, welcome back, everybody. We had Stefan van Belleghem, and now it's time to have George Stachow's opinion on the same subject. So, George, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dick. Well, you asked me to sort of create an opposing force here. So I'll try to be as highbrow, boring, and theoretical as I possibly can be, and let's see if I succeed. Not really good at that, but I'll try. Now, what I'll try to do is I'll try to appropriately start, as any highbrow presentation should, from reminding you something that your mom told you, which is keep your promises. If you make promises, keep them. Maybe that was your dad who told you that, but that was a good advice. Now, I think if we start the conversation about experience from the very top, and the very top really is your brand promise, then we will arrive at an interesting place. Now, the big thought really is making sure that we keep our promises one transaction at a time. As Stephen was saying, it's not about big things, it's about the small things. So I'll try to tell you a few stories, and my goal for this presentation is really to have you thinking about a few questions that are practically applicable to your situation in your business. Well, let's start with the first story that will lead us to the first question. Imagine you're somewhere in the middle of nowhere in a foreign country. I know we're all quite keen to start traveling again, and you're tired, and you're walking down the street. You don't understand anything that is said there, and all of a sudden there is this wonderful sign of golden arches that you see. That's the only symbol that you really recognize in the whole street, and it looks like paradise. Now, what the symbol really is, it is a promise. It refers to a promise that you have in your head that was built over the years and years of you interacting with this brand, which is, this means that somewhere just around the corner, there will be a place with a clean toilet, with hot food, and that food it's not going to poison you. It's going to be pretty good, and you can stay there. Probably it's going to be air conditioned, and it's going to be all right. And that fundamental promise that was built in your relationship with this brand over so many years feels really appealing at that moment of walking down the street in a foreign country. Now, what I want to point your attention to is this idea that brands in some way are promises. If brands mean anything in the real world, they're the promises in the heads of people built over a series of interactions. And we'll go over that idea a little more because I think it is important. But if we realize that brands are in fact promises, the symbols for the promises that could be delivered to me, then we have to realize that brands, like any promises, therefore are like babies. You know, promises are fun to make, very, very difficult to deliver. There's a big issue here because in our organizations, in your organizations, people that make promises and people that have to deliver on the promises are very often not the same people. Now, going back to your family again, if you have two sons like I do and you say, hey, Johnny, you make promises and your brother has to deliver on them, it's not quite going to end up in a good situation for anybody, including the two guys. If some people make promises and other people are tasked at delivering on those promises, you're going to end up with pretty bad situations. So if advertising is about making promises, and this is one way of looking at that, and then operations, or whatever it is called in your line of business, is about delivering, there seems to be a gap between the two. Making the promise and delivering on the promise seem to be slightly separate worlds in most of the organizations that we tend to work with. So there you have the first question, which is there a gap between the brand promise and the brand delivery, and how to close that gap? And the gap could exist on multiple levels. It could be a mental gap of what kinds of things we're promising there and what kinds of things we're delivering on here. It could be an organizational gap, who is making the promise and who is delivering on the promise. Or it could be a KPI gap in terms of how is the person making the promise motivated, or the whole organization, and measured, versus the person delivering on the promise. Now, this actually requires you to go back into your presentation coffers and think about what is your actual brand promise, what it is. What does it say? And surprising a number of people, if we were in a real setting, I would ask you to show your hands and so forth. I'm not going to do that now, but surprisingly difficult it may be for many of you to actually think about what your brand promise is, which is a sign of a problem. Because if we don't know what the promise is, and if it's not expressed clearly enough that you could actually tell that to the person in the trenches, to somebody delivering on it right there in the store, how can we expect that promise to be delivered? So that's the first question. Now let's park that for a second and go deeper into what brands are and how those promises actually work. I want you to imagine a second situation now for me. You're sitting in a nice cafe, again, one other thing that everybody's missing right now. You have a very expensive and possibly overpriced piece of equipment in front of you, and you're ordering a cappuccino or whatever the drink of your choice may be. And you open up the laptop and you stare at a blank page and you start writing something. There's a certain feeling attached to that most of the people on the call would be able to resonate with. And even though functionally it's the same situation as opening a very old HP laptop in your bedroom, emotionally that's quite a different situation. And the interesting thing is you're going to probably write somewhat different things depending on which situation you're in. And so what that highlights really is this other part of the equation, or other part of the story, that brands are feelings, right? It's not just about the fact that there is a clean toilet there and the fact that it's going to be nice food, and that's what the symbol of the golden arches really tells you. It's also that I'm going to feel good about the food that I'm going to eat, hopefully, if McDonald's succeeds in what they're trying to do. And for Apple, that means that they're going to make you feel a certain way. Now, if brands are feelings, and we all know, I don't have to talk to this audience about the importance of emotion in brand building, then the big question that I believe all of us have to think about quite strongly and quite deeply is, how do we want to make people feel? It sounds like an easy question, but I recall a situation that I had, I think last year I was talking to the CEO of a big company in the Middle East, and they presented to us lots of charts with brand pyramids and brand compasses and whatnot and other conceptual things. And at the end of it, they were briefing us to kind of help them translate that into the ads, but also into their brand experiences. And I asked him one simple question, which is, okay, I understand all that. How do you want to make people feel? And despite all the words in the brand pyramids, there was no simple answer to that. And I think that's a problem. Because if we don't know how we want to make people feel, how can we hope to actually make people feel anything? And how can we hope to arrive at this kind of very distinctive feeling that a good brand is known for? Now, you may have some concern at this stage if you're following through and say, well, sounds like a smart question, but is it going to be a useful question? Are we all going to end up just saying, hey, you want to make people feel good? Or, hey, you want to make people feel happy? Right? It feels like it could be one of those things that every marketer would answer more or less the same way, and it's just one more bullet in your slides that nobody ever reads. Now, I don't think that's the case. I think if we go deeply enough, we can actually define a very specific feeling. And I'll give you a few examples from the known brands to illustrate that. Going back to my Apple example, what Apple is really trying to do in some way, and obviously I'm back engineering this for your benefit, is they're trying to make you feel like a genius, right? You open that thing, and obviously going all the way back to their ads, from '97 about the round pegs in the square holes and the rest of it, you're going to feel like you're a genius about to type something fantastic, whether that be code or whether that be the next novel. Moleskine does the same thing. That thing, precisely because it is so over-engineered and expensive, makes you feel like you're something special as well. That's a distinct feeling. You could brief somebody in a customer service department to make sure that people feel like geniuses in other situations as well. Dove famously tries to make you feel beautiful. Not necessarily just be beautiful, but feel beautiful. And you see the relationship is quite interesting because all sorts of studies show that when people feel they're beautiful, they're actually perceived as more beautiful by the external world as well. So it does have a very, very specific impact on the people as well. Another brand, Axe or Lynx as it's marketed in some places, they uncovered a really interesting feeling territory in the early 2000s when they realized that actually men want to feel desired as well, quite actively desired. And if a brand makes you feel desired, that's a really interesting territory. Again, this is a clear brief you can make for your customer service and customer experience development. Harley Davidson wants to make you feel free. This is why it's such a staple in terms of your midlife crisis purchases, because that's what I buy when I want to go free. Again, those are all single words, but some brands go really down very specific definitions of the feelings that are quite unique to them. We work for Skittles, for example, and their definition is this glorious phrase of making people feel pleasantly perplexed, right? Just the right kind of weird. It's perplexed because I have no idea what's going on here, but it's deployed in a way that I know that they're making fun of something that was ripe for making fun of, and it's pleasant, right? So I think if you actually work through the thought and arrive at a very clear definition of how do you want to make people feel, that will help you understand that actually delivering on a brand promise has two dimensions, not one. We talked about the promise of the high quality, hot food and clean environment for McDonald's, but there is the other side of it, which is how is it going to make you feel? And if you just deliver on this, so to say, functional part of the brand promise and forget not just to articulate, but also to deliver on the emotional part of it, you're going to miss out, as Stephen mentioned as well. So we're arriving at an interesting thing because at the beginning of this conversation, Dick introduced this sort of as a battle and as two oppositional forces. Now, what I'm trying to make you see is that you can think about it as not oppositional, but orthogonal forces, which is a overly fancy word for two things that are not against each other, but actually are independent of each other. If you think about these two axes, does it work as a brand and as a service? But then there is the other one, which is, does it move me emotionally as a brand and as a service? If you start dimensionalizing it this way, you arrive at quite interesting consequences. First thing you can do is you can think about different product categories or products along this chart. And you can say, if something simply works but doesn't move you emotionally, that's probably a commodity. And that's fine, but that's a tricky place to be for a brand because commodities obviously only trade on a hard price. Now, if somebody is buying an old car, let's say vintage car, does it work better than a modern car? No, it doesn't. But hell, it feels good to be in that car. Right? So it makes you feel a certain way, and therefore you're ready to pay for it, possibly more. Right? But obviously, these are the extreme examples. There's everything in between. Now, the other thing that you can start thinking about is amongst all of the things that you do as a marketer, amongst all of the things that you do from TV ads to packaging and beyond that to all parts of the consumer experience, you can start asking those questions. Does it move people? And does it work in terms of delivering the practical brand promise? Now, again, starting from the corner of it works, packaging, most people think about it as primarily having to deliver the functional side of it, right? It has to hold the product, it has to make sure that it can be stored, and in transportation it's not broken and the rest of it. But at the same time, packaging is one of the most underused brand channels because it's right there in front of you in your fridge. The number of contacts that you will have with that packaging is tremendous compared to the number of contacts that you may have through media, and yet very few people actually pay attention to that as an opportunity to move people emotionally. Well, the other end of the spectrum, there's a TV ad or out-of-home material. It should move people That's what TV ads are for. They should move people emotionally, and then they come in. But at the same time, could there be things that also allow you to deliver on the functional side of the brand promise? Right? The key thought here is it's two-dimensional. We can think about this way. And we can start thinking about moving things. Like I already mentioned, packaging is possibly the most underused brand channel in the world. What could we do to make people feel a certain way without compromising on the quality of the way packaging actually works functionally? TV ads, making them work is a tricky proposition. Some companies try. But out of home, for example, easily can also deliver on the functional side. It reminds me, if we're on the McDonald's theme, it reminds me from years ago of when the out-of-home materials placed along the highways were made smart to show you the traffic information and to actually help you understand that there is a detour to McDonald's that's not going to take up more of your time, to the point that Stephen was mentioning earlier. So let's think about all those channels in terms of what are the opportunities to make them work better, but also about the opportunities to make them move people better. So that's the second question. That's the second area that I would invite you to explore and think about, which is how do people feel when they interact with your brand? Through packaging, through a support chat, through customer service ecosystem, through TV ads. How do we make people feel? And that requires you to be intentional about how you want to make people feel. And once you're intentional about that, that raises a question of how do you know how you make people feel, right? There's a whole question of research that we don't have time to go into. But how do we find out how we make people feel, right? Because if you look at the traditional brand monitors, the way they're set up, for most of you, they are focused on either phone interviews or online interviews with people that have nothing to do with the moment of interaction. So you're only dealing with the residual feeling, and possibly rationalized, because that's when you ask people to give you an answer and verbalize it. And on the other hand, you have customer experience metrics that usually just focus on, was the food hot, right? And you're not trying to really understand how did you make people feel at that moment in that instance. So that's a whole other question, which is, are you intentional about how you make people feel? Do you know how you make people feel across all the different touch points, channels, moments, whatever you want? It's the second area. And now the third part of the story that will sort of conclude us in this exploration of the brand side of customer experience, if you will. Again, sticking to McDonald's because it's a brand that everybody can relate to. You wake up in the morning, you go to McDonald's, you go in, you press around 14 buttons on the self-order machine, slightly annoyed because you just wanted a coffee and you have to say no to all these things trying to upsell you, but fine. Make it through, get the receipt, go to the counter, wait for your number, then get your coffee, then finally sit down, and this is what you see, the receipt and the packaging, and you're ready to enjoy your coffee. Now, this raises a question, which is you had multiple interactions along the way, right? From the moment you walked in, possibly the part that I forgot to mention is you got a reminder on your app. You had multiple interactions with the brand. And these interactions make a certain feeling. They make a certain impression. They create a certain emotional predisposition towards the brand. And the number of these interactions that actually matter is huge compared to the number of contacts that you can buy with your paid media. For most brands. For some brands, that's not the case. Vattenfall here on the line would be an interesting example, because actually the number of practical interactions with the brand in the CX channels is very limited, right? It's coming, the electricity is coming every now and then I get a bill, and that's it. But if you think about the whole broad scheme of things, interactions are important, and they're brand building opportunities. So that brings me to the third point, which is you can think of brands as interactions. They're just the sum of all the interactions that you had with the brand all over the years. For McDonald's, this is the sum of all the interactions that you had with them. And the sum of all these interactions and how these interactions made you feel, that creates the total emotional predisposition that you have for this brand. And we know that this emotional predisposition is what determines your next visit likelihood and how much you're ready to pay, which is a critical component. Price elasticity is obviously influenced, and we have all sorts of data to prove that, primarily by your emotional predisposition towards a certain brand. So what this means then is that every single interaction across the journey is an opportunity to deliver on your brand promise. And to deliver on it, building on what I just said, on both dimensions, the functional dimension and the feeling dimension. And if we're not using that opportunity, we're wasting money. We're wasting an opportunity to create an emotional predisposition. We're wasting an opportunity to secure the next purchase while this person is making the current purchase. So let's continue to work on this dimensionalization thing. I want to build it out a little bit more now. And let's see that we also have the left part of this, right? I'm going below zero on both axes to say, hey, it's not just about the fact that it works. The important thing, and this is what we heard about a few minutes ago as well, that it works better than expected. Because expectations shift, right? It works better than expected today. Tomorrow, your competitors will catch up, and the expectation will shift, right? So it has to work better than expected. If it just works as expected, fine, but that's not making a positive difference. And on the other end of the spectrum, it just doesn't work at all. It's broken, okay? And then if you look at the vertical axis, at the top you have, you really, it not just moves you in some way, it leaves you with a good and distinctive feeling. Not just good, but good in a specific way, in a way that will continue to push your brand's unique emotional advantage. And then the bottom end is either no feelings or bad feelings, right? So let's play this out a little bit just to imagine. You know, there's a central area there, which I call the meh area, right? It's okay. It works as expected, didn't make me feel anything. That's a very dangerous place to be, because the moment there is a better offer on the market, or the moment there is the same offer, but that makes you feel something, consumers will switch. So that's a tricky place. Obviously, there are worse places than that to be. You know, the bottom left, which is it didn't work. Let's say I go to McDonald's, it's closed, and the sign on the door is really rude. That's a never again, right, situation. Very, very bad and hard to keep up with. The situation on the bottom right is also tricky because it works as expected or a little bit better, but didn't make me feel anything good at all. That's a tricky situation because yes, I may stick around because it just works, but the moment something starts to work equally well and offer me a good feeling, I will jump. The situation on the top left is also interesting because I have a good feeling about this brand, and then I arrive and that doesn't work. You know, that's wasted money at best. At worst, it's actually a lost trust, which is really hard to recover. That's a classic situation that you get when some people are making promises and other people are delivering them, right? The promise was good, made me feel good, didn't quite deliver. And obviously the place where you want to be with all your experiences, but most important ones to start with, is the top right side of this matrix, which is when you get this feeling of this was great, this worked better than expected, and made me feel a certain way, and I want more of it. One of my clients is a luxury jewelry brand, and they have this wonderful philosophy of their customer experience, which I believe is helping them grow at the speed that they managed to grow at, which is they're saying we fail if the person leaving our boutique does not have in mind the next purchase that they will have next time they come to us, right? It's not about closing this purchase. That's a given. Yeah, we'll try to do that. But the important thing is when they leave, they already have in their mind the next thing that they're going to buy. And this philosophy influences how they design their products, right? Because the whole thing then is designed in a way that this thing actually requires this other accessory that will make you feel better, as well as obviously how they train their customer service representatives, who always try to arrange a conversation in a way that it will be a journey, and they take people on the journey. But this idea that when your thing works better than expected and makes you feel a certain way and leaves you with a distinctive feeling unique to your brand, then people will want more of it. And so what this really gets us to is this very important idea that making people feel something in this transaction is not just some, high-level, airy-fairy brand story. It's actually a very practical way of securing the next transaction. Again, think about the McDonald's kiosk experience. Yes, it can be trying to upsell you 3 times, or it can be trying to move you as efficiently as possible. That's great, and we absolutely have to do that. We should not compromise the operations. But are you trying to just maximize this transaction and the value of this transaction? Or are you also trying to make sure that the person comes back again? And what is the trade-off between the two? And I think once we start thinking this way and understand that making people feel something today is the best way to make sure they come back and buy something tomorrow, we'll start applying our resources differently. Which leads me to the third and final question before I summarize, which is, okay, how can we actually measure and manage the delivery of our brand promises? And when we say the delivery, we assume that the brand promise is defined both functionally and feeling-wise. So we need to deliver it on both the feeling end and the function end, and in every touch point, every time. Now that's a dream, right? It's hard to imagine that this is possible, but it does raise a very important question, which is, how do we research and measure that, and how do we manage for that? Because no company I know or at least the ones that we explicitly work with, really have the KPI set up in a way that would equally and clearly show the delivery of their brand promise, emotionally as well as functionally, in a way that would align the whole organization. And we'll talk about the KPIs in a second if you're interested through your questions. But let me just try to summarize. You know, the one big thought, if you take away one thing, I'd like you to think about the brand promise. It probably is sitting somewhere in a slide deck. And you probably look at it every now and then, but not very often. Now, I would ask you to dig that back up. Take that from under the rug or wherever it is that it's hiding and look at it again. And then look critically at all the touch points that you're creating for your customers. Because you have to deliver on that brand promise. That's what it's for. It's not for some fancy marketing presentations. It's for delivering in every single situation. And once you're committed to delivering on it in every single situation, then here are some steps that you can follow. First, make sure that you're clear not just on the function that your brand or business is performing, but also the feeling that you're trying to give to people. Second, view each transaction as an opportunity to deliver both the function and the feeling. Right? Don't just say, hey, this is for the ops people to figure out, this is for our brand people to have nice time creating ads. That doesn't work this way. People experience the promise delivered or undelivered the same way. And then finally, find a way, and this is the most difficult one, to measure and manage the holistic delivery of the brand promise. If you do all of those things, I believe it will make a massive difference for your customers, which is the only thing that matters. Thank you very much.
Very good, George.
Thank you.
Thank you. So far you're not done. You use Apple in your examples of a brand delivering its promises. And I think we all do, where we use nice examples from the big brands of the world, like Nike, Tesla, and Apple. But how feasible is that for the ordinary, for the real world we're living in? So for brands like we have on the screen here.
I think it's actually the other way around, surprisingly, as always. And the reason I say that is the only reason I use the big guys is because everybody can relate to them, and so it's easy to visualize. The second reason I use them is to show that some of the successes are paved through a lot of clarity on how they want to make you feel. Now, I think it's actually easier for the small guys. If you go to the opposite side of the spectrum, you're a one-man show or one-woman show. It's very easy to be very clear on what you're trying to deliver, and it's very easy to have a personal relationship with your customers who you know and know what you're trying to do for them and how you make them feel. It actually gets only harder as you scale.
Okay.
Because the people that are big have to deliver on that through 10,000 touch points and 10,000 people working for them. The smaller you are, the easier it is to deliver.
But it's this economy of scale in this situation.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think we start small,
Yeah.
and then we work through that.
Okay. Other question. What is a good KPI other than NPS to measure the brand promise delivery?
I think that's the trickiest and most important question that you can ask, because we all know that unless there is a KPI, nothing will ever move. And so the problem with NPS for me is that it's trying to have a universal KPI that works for everybody. And the reality is that different brands are actually trying to do different things in the world, right? So for me, the design of the KPI has to be related to what your brand promise is. If McDonald's is all about making delicious feel-good moments easy for everyone, then their brand promise delivery KPI is about how many feel-good moments have we created for our customers. If some other brand is about eliminating bullshit from your telco experience, okay, let's count that. How many bullshit moments have we eliminated?
Yeah.
I think we have to really translate very directly what you're promising to what you're delivering, and ideally, if somebody asked me, I would put that KPI right up there next to your sales, because eventually that's what you're here to do. Just like you have people holding your organization accountable for their environmental promises, right? If you make an environmental promise, or if you make a promise to your employees, you hold yourselves accountable. Why is it then that when we're making a brand promise, we're not always holding ourselves accountable in the same way?
Are you telling this story to your sons as well?
Absolutely, but a
Okay.
little later.
Okay, a very nice, interesting question from Boet Krijken from KLM. Boet, is it possible to put on your camera and to ask your question on screen?
Yeah, hello, good afternoon.
Dag
Can you hear
Boet,
me?
goedemiddag.
Hi, good afternoon.
Je had
Hi,
een
George.
interessante vraag
Thank you
voor
for your
ons.
story. Well, yeah, that was a real question. What we did during COVID, as people didn't want to fly, we started adding additional questions about the way our passengers felt. Are you scared of flying? What is the willingness to fly? What are the conditions? And we also started asking questions together with our colleagues from Air France. How did you feel during the flight? And that question itself was pretty controversial. And we did it, and we got tremendous positive replies. So we are definitely on this road. My second point is, of course, our crew does a great job, especially also now in the COVID period. But the complexity with all those masks makes the communication between the passenger and the crew pretty difficult. And there we see big differences between our crew members. But I think this element of how do you make me feel, right, in very difficult circumstances is as important as ever before. So we're creating a new cultural brand movie for our staff, and I definitely will take this into account. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think you're pointing to a very interesting side of the question, which is how do you actually measure how people feel, right? Because you said you asked them, and I assume that was some sort of a form or some sort of a post-flight or pre-flight, filling in form experience. Now, which I think is great and will get you to a lot of stuff. One thing that I'm mindful of and trying to solve for a lot of our clients is feelings do not translate into words that well. When I'm asked to describe my feeling in words, we're already 2 steps removed from how I actually feel. This is why I'm really interested in, especially for companies like you who do have a captive environment inside the plane and who do have an opportunity to sort of the time for people to do something else, to look for non-word ways of finding out how people feel. Now, it could be looking at the facial emotions.
Would you use icons?
Pardon?
Would you use icons?
Yes, exactly. So,
Would you use icons?
So one simple way that the culture has developed is emojis, right? Emojis are excellent. People understand them. People know them. But it's already a wide variety of things. You could look at the facial recognition the moment people leave the flight. I mean, masks make it a little more difficult, and GDPR. But you could ask people to choose the color instead of just choosing the word. There's a whole lot of psychology around color theory and how people feel the different way. You can ask people to select a song that was a symbol of their flight. Anything that gets you a little beyond the left-brainy, rational word-setting exercise, I think will give you a lot of depth in this trying to understand how you're actually making people feel.
Okay, is this answering your question, Boet? Okay, then we move on.
Perfect, thank you.
We have a question from Paul. How does McDonald's want me to feel, George?
Well, McDonald's is a tricky one, and McDonald's wants you to feel a delicious feel-good moment. That's the official word. The really interesting thing, and this is something that we've been doing for McDonald's, work for McDonald's in a whole lot of countries, in 45 plus markets, is because of the nature of the McDonald's brand, because it is so global and local, we have to really understand what feel-good means for different people. And there's a whole variety, there's a big spectrum, right? So a big exercise is, okay, for a big brand and broad brand like McDonald's, you end up saying that you just want me to have a delicious feel-good moment. What is a feel-good moment, right? And so we do ethnographies, deep ethnographies in places like, for example, Sweden, and find out that a feel-good moment is not a feel-good moment unless I'm feeling like I'm doing the right thing for the planet and for the society, towards the top of Stephen's pyramid, right? Okay, that leads you to a very different definition of the specific feeling that you need to create in that market for McDonald's in order to fulfill its brand promise. And a situation, let's say in Russia, would be completely different. What makes you feel good is different. In Latin America, what makes you feel good is firstly, I mean, again, it's overgeneralizations, but it's first and foremost about who you're sharing the moment with. A very different perspective from the Swedes, right? And there your feel good will have to be different. So I think for global brands, the real challenge is contextualizing it, if they have to, in a way that would make sense for the local culture. And that takes a lot of work. I would encourage you all to really go deep on that with ethnographic work, if you can, to find out what is the unique feeling that your brand can deliver in this cultural context.
Yeah, let's take, I think we're out of questions now. Let's take Stephen back in the group because we started. Maybe you take the middle.
Yeah, I'll stand here. I'll take this one.
You here, Steve.
Yeah, we're in position.
In position.
You need,
Because we started a session with the question, what's more important, brand strategy or customer experience? And I think when you make a summary of the discussion, you find out that they're both equally important. And we can demonstrate that with the following mapping, where you see on the horizontal axis, you see the level of customer experience, and vertically you see brand distinction, right? So it's not rocket science that you don't want to end up in the bottom left side. That is the kind of Bermuda Triangle where obsolete brands just disappear on a time like V&D. Van Moof, on the other hand, has a great brand, but they fail in delivering the brand promise because they have all kind of delivery issues and real problems with delivering the promise to their clients, and they do not communicate it transparently. So people don't know when they get their new bike. So that's really hurting the brand. How strong you are as a brand, it hurts, and you have to fix it quickly. In the bottom right corner, we have Centraal Beheer. Because they offer a great experience. Like I said, on my own, based on my own experience. But a lot of people don't know that this is, so it feels like a missed opportunity. And of course, we as an agency help Centraal Beheer a little and work on this. And in the upper right corner, we have Paradise. That's a great brand with a great customer service, and they come together. So, if you see this, and if you digest the presentations of each other, gentlemen, Stephen, what did you think of George's presentation?
I really like to hear.
To be honest.
I love listening to George. We met virtually 2 weeks ago to discuss this, and then basically George gave me an insight that made my life easier, and also thanks to you guys, because I give a lot of talks about customer experience, and then sometimes people come to me like with branding and stuff like this, and for me it was always like, in my mind, it was going in the same direction, versus where you see in many organizations it's different people who are responsible, it's different KPIs that they create for it, and it doesn't make sense to split it up. I like the example of the promise and keeping the promise. I also have 2 boys, they're 9 and 11. Imagine one making the promises, the other one has to deliver on that. I love that example, but that's what's happening in many of these organizations, and that's no common sense at all. And I like this visualization. This is George's idea, this summary. Yeah, I love the way how you described it last time, saying it's not opposing vectors, but they're basically pointing in the same direction. And I just love that. I think that in the beginning you put us in different corners, but I think we're in the same corner. And if you bundle,
That's a little bit of disappointment for me. You understand?
yeah, well, that's we're very sorry for that. But if you bundle those two insights, I think then you create a fantastic experience for your customers, and the organization will benefit. So I just like listening to him. Yeah.
Okay.
I love the
Okay.
talk.
Yeah. Now you cannot be very negative.
You're the last one. You can
Yeah.
burn me down. It's fine. I
George?
cannot reply anymore.
I love the rhino story, man. The rhino story was really cool.
Thank you.
I'm a sucker for all sorts of evolutionary biology stuff, and particularly what I like about this is the synergetic relationship, really, that you're outlining between multiple parts going on. So the fundamental idea, the easy way of thinking about me as a company and the customer is that I'm extracting value from them. I think what you do with bringing the rhino analogy is actually just showing that it is a symbiotic experience, that you're bringing value to them, therefore in exchange they're trying to bring value to you,
Exactly.
which is protection on behalf of both of those species, and I really like that. I think one thing about this mental jump from thinking about brand and experience as oppositional to thinking of them as 2 separate things and you have to ace on both. What this allows you to do is not just say, hey, as a company, I want to be in this corner and in that corner. I think that's useful, but that's not enough. What's important for me, and a big revelation where I would love to work with everybody in here, is to say, actually, which moments are where? Because no company will have all their moments and all their touch points in the top right. That's not possible, and probably that's not the best strategy, because then you're saying I'm going to have TV ads that will try to do the functional thing. Well, TV ads, people cannot eat TV ads just yet, and so that's the problem there. Maybe your TV ad should make people feel something, and your food and your packaging should do that. But altogether, we're looking for opportunities to make every single touch point, every single moment maximized in terms of its full potential, both in terms of the feeling and in terms of the function. And that, I think, we concur.
Yeah.
will get you to a massive and long-lasting success.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for your great presentation and discussion. I hope that the online audience is also a little bit, they also agree on this. If so, thumbs up. If not, don't do anything. I see some optimistic patterns. The only disadvantage of inspirational sessions, I feel, is the morning after feeling, the hangover, right? Because tomorrow morning, that's my experience, you don't know how to implement these things. So I think we can help a little bit here. The only thing we like to say to you, just start somewhere. As Steven was telling, don't build a cathedral, just start something and make small steps forward. But don't hesitate and start tomorrow morning. Share the knowledge and share the inspiration with your team, and start doing. And if you would like to have some help, we will be more than happy to organize a workshop, a BXCX workshop for you, and help in making a big leap forward. So on behalf of the entire DDB Unlimited team, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Steven. Thank you, George. Let's unlock 2021 together and make sure that the next performance day will be a live event again, right? So meanwhile, stay inspired, stay connected, and stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.